Hello, and welcome to the Yogeez podcast. Today, we've got a special guest on, which I'll tell you about in a minute, and I'll be co-hosting today with Ollie. Ollie, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, mate. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. We were saying before that we always talk about food before we podcast, so I'm a little bit hungry now, but excited for the pod today. And so should we, I think it's time we can jump into welcoming our guest who is with us today. So today we've got someone called Duro, who has an amazing story moving to the UK as a kid, teenage years working in street enterprise, and then going on to found an amazing organization that helps young people from underrepresented backgrounds into employment. So Duro, welcome to the Yogeez podcast, and thanks for being here.
Hey Nick, hey Ollie, thank you both for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. Looking forward to getting stuck in.
Nice. How are you doing today? All good?
I'm good. Yeah, it's all good. You know, it's Tuesday evening, so yeah, I'm hanging in there.
Nice. Do you want to start just by telling our listeners a little bit about yourself? We'll probably go into the full story later, but you know, whatever you'd like to share with the listeners to get to know Duro.
Yeah, getting to know Duro. So I'm Duro Oye, founder and chief exec of an organization called 2020 Change. Got a background in filmmaking, so I've got a creative background, and that's what kind of led me to starting the organization. And I've got a knack for storytelling. So yeah, just capturing people's stories, their genuine, authentic stories, and communicating that to the world. And we do that with 2020 Change as well. So not just only helping young people from underrepresented ethnic groups, low socioeconomic backgrounds into employment, but also helping them own their own stories, taking ownership of their own stories of who they are, being their true authentic self, and being able to show up as themselves wherever it is they go. You know, that's me. That's my life's work. I'm a family man as well, married with a little one, who I'm just trying to create a better life for, and a better world for. That's one of my many purposes, but it's definitely high on the list.
Amazing. Well, there's a few things there that you said that we'll definitely delve into and jump into later. But as per usual, we normally start with the question. So, Ollie, do you wanna go ahead and ask Duro?
I'd love to, but first I just want to say, Duro, I'm getting some serious calm vibes from you right now. It's so nice. I'm so relaxed right now.
Love it. I love it. I get that a lot. It's something to do with my voice. It's quite soothing.
The storytelling voice.
Yeah.
There you go.
It is. It's the storytelling voice. And with that, I'm gonna go into that, and I'm just gonna try and silkily ask Duro, what's your problem, mate?
I have many problems. The one on the table today is probably one that's been on my heart for a while, and it's quite a big problem. It's a societal problem. You know, just thinking about the kind of work that I do and how that fits into wider society, and whether we will ever get to a stage where the work that I do will become irrelevant. I know it's a big one to digest, but that's what's on my heart as I'm sitting here right now.
And how does
I think I can definitely relate to that.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, how does that actually make you feel?
Do you know what? At first, when I first started, it was quite overwhelming because, you know, I saw myself as, you know, a small clog in this big machine, and, you know, who am I to try and affect change in the way that I know change needs to happen. But I now have a more longer term view on that. And I think that's since the birth of my son, you know, I'm looking at, by the time he gets to working age, so to speak, so by the time he's 18, you know, it'll be the year 2040. And what can I do as an individual through my organization to kind of shift that needle forward between now and then? And that kind of gives me hope. You know, meeting other people within the space that have shared values, shared beliefs, and we're all striving for the same goal also gives me hope. So it's not as much as a burden as it used to be, because I know that things are happening within the space. I'm not one of those individuals that's, you know, I'm just going to stand here and always complain and say that things aren't changing. I can see the change. It's not as much, and there still needs to be a lot more, but we're definitely heading in the right direction, and I'm not going to give up. And I know my comrades aren't going to give up as well. So yeah, we're all in this together. So that gives me a lot of hope for the future.
Could you elaborate a little bit more on what change is for you? Like, I think it's unique to a lot of individuals, but what has changed to Duro?
Change for me comes in different forms, but if I was to kind of give like a blanket response, it would be a fairer society for all. A society where each individual could access opportunity in a fair way, because right now opportunity isn't distributed fairly across every sector of society. So change would be seeing opportunity, fair opportunity distributed for all.
It's quite a big thing to have on your shoulders. Do you feel that pressure, or do you just not let it get to you?
I got broad shoulders. I mean, yeah, it gets to me from time to time. I can't lie, but I feel like, and it's something that I think we're probably going to get into as the pod continues. But I feel like I was created to be alive at this moment in time. Sometimes I think about history and I think about things that some of our past heroes went through, things that they did, and I'm just like, I don't know if I could have hacked it. I don't know if I had that kind of patience. I don't know. Do you know? I feel like this is my time. This is my season. For the kind of person that I am, with everything that I have on the inside of me, to be able to come out and for me to be able to fully express myself. So all I know is I can just affect change in my own little way, in my own little corner of the world, and hopefully that has ripple effects and that can kind of ricochet across the world. But I'm just here to do what I need to do, and that allows me not to feel overwhelmed. But obviously, as a young person, you tend to want to take on the world and do everything. But as you grow up, you start to realize actually, yeah, there's only so much you can do. There's only so much you can change, and I've come to realize also that not everybody can change, and that's okay. And you can't change and help everyone, and that too is okay. So I can only do what I can do. As long as I've done my best, that's it.
Yeah, that last point is a really interesting one, because I feel that sometimes I will, if I disagree with the way not someone is, but the way someone thinks or their values, then I kind of do sometimes take it upon myself to try and change it. Sometimes it's even an opinion, maybe it's even a stupid opinion with a mate, and I'll take it upon myself and be like, but why? And I do think that thing about not understanding sometimes you can't change somebody and how they think, and sometimes you can, but there are instances where you just can't, and you have to accept it. And sometimes accepting it is really hard, and it's actually something that I've found really hard, especially with friends who I kind of grew up with, or friends who I used to be really close with, and we have a kind of a big difference in opinion or values that actually is so big that sometimes it makes it hard to carry on being as close to them, but you just have to accept it sometimes. And I think it's one of those things in life that is really hard. And as you're saying, as you get a little bit older, and as I've matured, although not completely matured yet, probably, I'm kind of understanding is an important thing. And it's part of that whole letting go thing that we talk about sometimes as well, and the importance of letting go and doing that. So I think, yeah, that last point really resonated with me quite a lot.
That's true. And I think another way to kind of look at it is a strong thing that I believe in is seed planting. So you're not gonna change everyone overnight. Maybe you're not supposed to. Maybe you're just there to plant a seed. Someone else plants a seed, and then someone else plants a seed, and then eventually it clicks for that individual, and you played a part in helping that individual see things from a different perspective. So I'm just a big believer in not forcing things. I'm here to play my part. Once my part is played, keep it stepping.
Mm.
Yeah, I love the ripple effect analogy as well. I think it's a really beautiful way of speaking about it. I heard someone say the other day, they were asking some advice, and they said, "Oh, I've got an opinion about something, but I'm in a minority. How do I talk to people about it? Because I really want to speak to people about it." And his advice was just pick and choose the time that you actually speak to people about it. Like, why are you wasting your time speaking to people with deaf ears? You know, like it's about affecting the people around you, affecting the people that actually care. And then, like you said, that ripple effect will happen, because if you can speak to people that have, you know, similar opinions or similar interests or similar walks of life, they'll understand more. And then hopefully, yeah, that ripple effect will happen.
It's also comes down to that patience piece as well. Many of us aren't patient, especially, you know, a lot of people working within social change, social impact. You know, you want change now, and that's not realistic. You know, like there's systems and processes that have been in place for years, and you know, you want to come and think one movement or one campaign is going to change all of that. That's not realistic, you know. So yeah, one thing that I've learned over time is to be patient. And you know, if we really want to get deep, like my full name, the full meaning of my Nigerian name is have patience and wait for the Lord. The shortened part of it, which is Duro, which is patience or wait. So I'm literally just living out my name, and I've become very, very patient
Oh,
over the
wow.
years.
I love that.
Never
I
knew
really
that.
love that.
Yeah, that is amazing. And maybe that's a good segue to talk about, you know, you moved to the UK from Nigeria at a young age, and we've spoken about this briefly, but how old were you again when you moved from Nigeria to the UK? Was it?
So yeah, Nick, if I'm honest with you, it's still blurry. I still need to kind of sit down with my parents and really figure it out. But I think it's between the ages of 5 and 7. I want to say 7.
5 and 7.
Yeah.
And as a kid, when you kind of arrived in the UK, having spent, you know, all the years before in Nigeria, can you remember how that felt? What you were going through at the time?
Yeah. So I think I shared this with you when we spoke as well. It's like it was a huge culture shock. You know, I came from Nigeria where like everybody kind of looks like me. I was the last of 6 children. So I had like older siblings. I was spoiled as a kid, pretty much had everything that I wanted. We lived in a nice house. We were very comfortable, in my opinion. But you know, my parents kind of had a bit more foresight than I did, looking at the political landscape and the economical landscape of the country, thinking, you know, I'd have access to better opportunities if they sent me to the UK. So my sisters were born in the UK, so they sent me over to, you know, live with my elder sister, who happened to live in Duro Farm Estate, which, if you don't know, is probably one of the worst council estates in the history of council estates. And obviously, if I was 7, Duro Farm rights was in 1985, so it wasn't too far off. When I came, right? So you can imagine the landscape of that council estate at the time. I landed on the estate, and immediately I was hit with depression. You know, I was sad, I was angry, all of these things, because they didn't even tell me I was moving to the UK. They just said I was going on holiday. And I didn't really care. It wasn't like one of those young kids that looked at the UK or America and thought, oh, I want to be there. I was very happy and very comfortable where I was. And all of a sudden, I went from being the youngest in the house to being the oldest in the house. So I had a niece and a nephew. My eldest niece is only 4 years older than me. Sorry, younger than me. So I was only 4 years older than her. So I kind of became like a big brother to her. And then I had a nephew who was probably about 3 to 6 months old. I can't really remember. So I had to, you know, look after them. And my sister at the time was working as a nurse. So you can imagine like long hours, late nights, early mornings. And her husband was still in Nigeria. So yeah, it was a huge culture shock. And I remember when I first went to school, you know, being the young Nigerian kid with pepper grains, with an accent, not really fitting in. I remember the first person that spoke to me, it was a young Chinese kid. I think his name was, I want to say his name was Steve or Eric or something. But the first thing he said to me was, "Who do you support?" And me being semi-street smart kid that I was, I also noticed that he was wearing a Manchester United kit with Eric Cantona on the back. I was like, Man United. So that's how I started supporting
That's
Man
like,
United.
oh, poor
Yeah,
you.
a bonding experience.
I know. So I was stuck with them as a team ever since then. But yeah, you know, just like growing up experiences, I was picked on, I was laughed at. I grew very hard skinned very quickly. So I got into a lot of fights, as you can imagine. Um, but then that's where that kind of like anger kind of stemmed from, because it's like I didn't choose this life. I just got handed it, and look what I have to deal with, kind of thing. So I got into a lot of fights, but at home I was like the golden boy. I was the good kid at home, and then at school I became like a terror, and that just continued on for years. Like I lived a double life, and obviously we'll get into the whole street enterprise element of things, but it was like people at home weren't aware of this life that I had, once I left the home and I closed the door. And yeah, that was quite difficult, but it was a learning experience, and I probably wouldn't change it because it's made me who I am today.
And what you were saying, how you when you went to the UK, you actually thought, or you're told it was you're going on holiday. How did you feel about your parents, or like what were you angry at your parents for not telling you, or kind of?
100%. No, 100%. I was angry at my parents, more so my mum, because she was kind of the one that yeah, she lured me into to the airport and all of that kind of stuff. And she said, it's not going to be forever. And she said she was going to come over. It took her about another 5, 6 years to eventually move over to the UK. And yeah, she just kept on saying that, it's for my own benefits, for my own good. But, being a young kid, short sighted, I couldn't see it. It wasn't until I got much older that I realized that, yeah, they were, genuinely doing it for my own good. But I also don't think they weighed up the cost too much as well, or weighed up the cost effectively, because that meant that I grew up without a father figure, right? So I had to kind of find my own father figure and my own male role models. And obviously, growing up in that kind of environment, very few and far between positive role models. I mean, I say that with a caveat because I always say to young people that we work with that those role models are out there, but it just depends on what lens you're using to look for these role models, right? So as a young kid, you think the role models are the rappers and the footballers and, those that make a lot of money. But then now, the lens that I have on now, it's like those role models could have been my next door neighbor who was studying medicine and dedicating 5 years to, doing things on the straight and narrow and coming out with a degree and going on to help people and eventually making a lot of money, but I didn't see that. I saw the drug dealers, the gangsters, the fraudsters, those involved in street enterprise. They became the role models. They became the way out, so to speak,
Is there? I was just going to ask, mate. Is there anyone that you did see as a role model growing up, or is like anyone in particular that you can think of that was good or bad? Or
I moved from my elder sister in North London to my other sister in South London. Still a council estate, but a better council estate. And she had a partner who I didn't know at the time, but he was a big time fraudster. Dressed nice, flashy, nice cars, all of that stuff. So he became, what I saw. And it wasn't even like I saw that what he was doing was wrong. It was my norm, right? Like other people go to work, he would go to work, but his work wasn't in an office. His work was wherever the job took him. So yeah, that just became my norm. And that was a number of things that I kind of picked up early on in life and kind of tapped into. And because I'm my quiet nature, my observant nature, I'd just pick up a lot of things from him and just try and replicate it with my boys and my friends. And yeah, I started from the age of 12, continued to the age of 21.
And Jorna, for our listeners, because I really like how you talk about street enterprise, and actually there was a lot that you learned from it that you've taken into your life from today. But for our listeners, do you want to kind of explain what street enterprise is and kind of what you were doing?
Yeah, so street enterprise is a term that I kind of coined, just to kind of help people understand the kind of lifestyle that I was involved in, things that came along with it. So yeah, anything you can think of in terms of like criminality, it's in the name, right? So enterprise that you carry out on the street, right? So illegitimate enterprise that you don't pay tax on. think on that. So like I said, I was involved in that from the age of 12 right up until 21, kind of worked my way up the ranks. Was very successful at it. But and I had a lot of I built a team around me. Some would interpret it as a crew or a gang, but let's go with team for now. And everybody had different positions that they played. Everyone held different roles. People were responsible for different things. I was kind of like in the background as the money man. So I was always kind of protected because I bring in the bacon. So everyone kind of eats through off of the back of that. But there were a number of skills that I picked up living that kind of lifestyle that I didn't know were transferable skills that could be used in a positive way, you know, to even set up legitimate businesses or gain employment, you know, within the corporate world and work my way up through the corporate ranks, just like that. And that was also down to the people that I was around. One, because nobody had ever done that before. People have always tried, but it's always been crooked and never really amounted to anything. It took me removing myself from the negative environments that I was in, placing myself in positive environments, surrounding myself with positive influences, positive role models, for them to identify these skills that I had and show me alternative ways in which I could use these skills, and kind of like to pay my debt to society and to try and help more young people get on the straight and narrow than the amount of young people that I led, you know, in the negative line and the negative path. I felt like I wanted to be able to do something as soon as possible to try and get as many people, you know, to see the light in the same way that I did. Because I just felt like there's not enough out there, and there weren't enough people like myself that had lived that kind of life and come out on the other side kind of unscathed. I felt like when you asked about burden on my shoulders, that's why I say early on, it was heavy. Do you know what I mean? It was heavy. It was like, I have to do this for everyone that is probably sitting in a cell right now, or sitting 6 foot deep right now, or, you know, has been deported back to Nigeria right now. Like, I've made it out. I need to go back and bring as many people out with me as possible. And I actually sat down, I think I told you, Nick, like, you know, I sat down and I counted how many people I'd influenced or impacted negatively. And that number came up to about 450. Now, as an organization through 2020, we've turned around the lives of 1,400 young people. So, yeah, I definitely feel like I pay my debt to society, but I'm not stopping there. You know, I'm just going to keep going until the wheels fall off.
I'm sitting here in awe because the stuff that you talk about is like, I've been watching Top Boy recently on Netflix, and it makes it look really cool. But hearing you speak about it is just like, you've actually lived that. You've lived like something that people have made like a really successful series about. And I just can't, I'm sure there's so many other geezers out there like me that just can't even fathom like kind of that life. And yeah, it's actually pretty crazy hearing you talk about it. But you talk about like how, yeah, you had that burden. And then obviously there must have been a part of you that got to a point where there's a switch. Did you have like an experience? Did something happen that made you think, I really need to change this, or just change
Absolutely.
your life?
You know, just on the Top Boy front, because it comes up quite a lot when I talk about my story, and especially when, you know, we engage with some of the young people that have similar stories like mine on our program. But what you'll find is those that live that lifestyle that's depicted in Top Boy, you know, wouldn't enjoy watching Top Boy. Do you get what I mean? Because obviously for them, it's like people are taking, and that's why storytelling is so passionate. I'm so passionate about storytelling and giving those individuals the opportunity to tell their own stories in a way that would resonate with people that have walked their shoes. And we actually be able to say, this is what I needed to kind of deter me from going down that path. So if you look right now, a lot of young people that don't live that life, that, you know, think that life is cool, would watch Top Boy and think, actually, you know, I can do that. You know, and Top Boy, if we're being real, gives away a few tricks of the trade. You know, like there's, you know, washing your fingernails after, you know, like all the little things like that. Like a normal young person wouldn't know that. And I don't know, maybe I'm just giving away something now as well, because it's like, who would have thought about that? But it's just little things like that. And, you know, for a lot of, you know, the young people that I work with, young men in particular that have lived that life, you know, they talk about Top Boy, even some young women. You know, I had a recent conversation with a young woman that was involved with a guy that was in that world. And she was like, yeah, she can't really engage with Top Boy in the same way as everyone else because it just evokes, you know, some negative thoughts and takes you back to a place that you've worked so hard to come away from. And then seeing how other people are responding to it, you're just like, if only you knew, you know.
Do you think it's a good thing that it exists, or do you think it's almost like a bad thing because it ultimately, like you kind of said, it's actually not nice to watch if you've lived it.
I think there's an element of both, right? You know, a coin has two sides. So you could say, yes, it's a good thing. The story's out there. People are earning money from it. You know, that side of it is good. It's great. But then I also think it needs to open up dialogue. It needs to open up conversation. So that's why I believe in like kind of documentary filmmaking like that gives you an insight into reality. It's not glamorizing it. It's not, you know, painting a picture around it. This is the reality. Let's have a conversation about what these young people are getting involved in, why they're getting involved in it. What can we do? So Top Boy could still do that. Do you know what I mean? They can run workshops. They can go, you know, take it around, take it on tour and say, look, this is Top Boy. Yes, it's glamour. Like, you know, you can watch it. It's entertainment, quote unquote. But there's a lot of learnings that you can take from this and, you know, look at how certain stories, certain characters panned out. You know, this is what you shouldn't do, as opposed to them thinking, oh, okay, I'm trying to be the Top Boy. You know, so I think there's a lot that the producers and the commissioners can do with it, but whether they care to, you know, whether that's their calling, whether that's their passion, that's on them. But everyone's different, you know.
I think from just a completely personal point of view, I think it probably would be useful just to kind of see the reality almost of it, and the impact that it has, which is literally probably what you are dealing with on a daily basis. And they don't really show what you would have gone through, which I'd love you to share with us, which is the flipping point, you know?
Yeah.
That moment.
Yeah. So that's it. So trying to think back to Top Boy, I don't know if they do, and if they do, they don't give it too much, they don't do it justice. For me, the flipping point, I kind of hit a glass ceiling. So, like I said, I was very successful at what I was doing. It's not like I don't have the horror stories, you know. So there's a lot of horror stories in Top Boy, right? So I've never been shot, never been stabbed, never been to prison, don't have a record, all of those things. But individuals like me, right, that make it out unscathed, tend to just park that part of their life, right? Because it's in the past. I don't want to bring it up. I don't want anyone digging into the skeletons in my past and all that kind of stuff. And I just felt like I couldn't do that because if I don't go out there and share my story and do something, people wouldn't know that people like myself exist. And there are lots of us out there, right? It's not until people hit a particular level of success that they feel comfortable enough to kind of share their backstory and everyone's inspired by it. But with me, my view is different. I'm trying to bring as many people along with me as possible. So when we are sharing those stories, it's not just on me. It's like, I can show you 1,500 other young people that have similar stories to me, right? So my tipping point, quite interestingly, came when I went to university. So I would like to say that, you know, university was probably the point in my life where I made the most money from what I was doing. And trying to maintain or clean that money became more headache than it was to actually make the money in the first place. So bear in mind, I'm young, right? Like super young. I'm engaged in things that I had no business being engaged in, right? Like at the age, I'm supposed to be focusing on my university work, but at uni, you know, my lifestyle at university was different. I never lived in dorms. You know, first year I had a 4-bedroom house to myself and all of these kind of things. That's just, it's not normal, right? And it was in my university home that I just thought to myself, how long can I genuinely continue like this? Right? Those thoughts started to come in. Those, you know, how long can this actually last? You know, and then things started to happen around me as well. People started dying, so that's a big wake up call, if anything, right? People started going to prison, getting like 10-year plus stretches for different things, not necessarily what I was involved in, but like I said, I was around, you know, some serious people and they were involved in all kinds of stuff. So people that I was close to, you know, were getting years And bear in mind, I'm still clean, unscathed, still doing this, good boy, going to uni, you know, making my money on the side and still trying to keep a low profile. And people also getting deported off of the back of like cases and stuff. So things were happening around me. And I grew up in a Christian home. So I've always been a Christian to the point where, like, as a child, I was kind of forced to go to church. And once I became a bit older, it was kind of like, you do your own thing. But I kept it going. So even at university, when I was doing everything that I was doing, I was still going to church. It was more like religion. But there were certain things that would be shared maybe in a sermon or something that will kind of strike a chord with me and just, like I mentioned before, plant that seed, right? So when I'm alone with my thoughts, those kind of, sermons or messages or scriptures will kind of prop up, and it will just really play on my conscience in terms of like what you actually doing with your life. And a lot of the things that I did to make money were like, scams that I came up with just sitting alone in my thoughts. So I thought, never really applied myself to do anything positive or constructive with this mind of mine and this brilliant mind of mine. Like, I'm not like some of my friends that felt like this is all that they could do. I've got prospects. I've actually got options that I haven't, explored yet. So why don't I try and explore some of these options before I kind of kick back and say, this is me for the rest of my life, And then my faith was kind of like kicking in there as well. It's like, I'm a Christian, right? So, it's like, have you, my spirit man was kind of saying to me, like, have you given your all to me yet? Have you kind of poured everything into what I've told you? Have you even tapped into half of the potential that I've placed in you? And I'm like, no. And it's like, I can't end my life or get to a stage of my life where I feel like I've given my all and this is all I have to show for it. So I thought, let me park this and tap into this side of my being and see where it takes me. If it doesn't pan out, then it doesn't pan out. Then at least I know that I've tried, right? So I still remember till this day, it was the 16th of August. So I'm coming up to, I think it's now my 16th or 17th anniversary of the day that I decided to turn my life around. Like, I walked into the church and said, I'm out. I told my friends. So I lived in uni, came back to London. I said, I'm out. Everyone laughed at me. Everyone thought, yep, the money's getting to your head. You're talking crazy. You're going to run out of money. You're going to come back. We're what? 16 years in, 17 years in now. And the change is still there, So that for me was that switch. And I'm glad that I made it when I did, because I don't know whether I would have had another second chance. I probably had 2 billion second chances, right? That probably would have been my last one. So, yeah, I'm just thankful that I stuck it out.
That scene in itself like sounds something from a TV series when you walk into the church and just almost like mic drop.
Yeah.
That's.
I mean, it wasn't that dramatic, but
we can, as a storyteller, it sounds like it was, and we can pretend that it was.
Yeah, with the light beaming in.
Yeah. We know what that scene looks like perfectly. But that I mean, your story is generally, as Ollie was saying, it's amazing to hear and inspiring, and the way you tell it is incredible. And I think as someone who isn't religious myself, although I kind of do certainly believe there is a higher power, or there's something beyond us. How do you, I guess there's two questions I have. One is, what does faith mean to you? And two, if it's linked in any way or if it's a separate question, do you think faith at Yogeez, kind of we're strong on or big on our mental and emotional health and trying to look after that? Do you think faith is let's call it a tool for or for people's mental and emotional health?
Sure, absolutely. I'll start with your first question in terms of what does faith mean to me? And quite simply put, I'll tell you, faith to me is everything. It's my anchor. It's what I always revert back to. It's what keeps me grounded. It's what keeps me focused. It's what keeps me in line, with my purpose. Without my faith, I wouldn't be the man that I am today. I wouldn't be doing the work that I'm doing today, because a lot of what we do is based on, me being the founder of my Christian values, my Christian beliefs, So it's about doing good for man, for society, all of that kind of stuff. I don't want to get too spiritual or scriptural, but there's a
We can.
scripture in Romans 5. It goes from 1 to 5, and I'm just going to quickly paraphrase it for you, just so it helps you kind of encapsulate my life. And that's basically, it talks about being justified by faith, having peace and access to Christ by faith, standing in his grace by faith, rejoicing in hope, and not only in glory, but also in tribulations. It talks about tribulation working patience, and patience experience hope, and hope is what makes me as an individual not be ashamed of my past and the person that I used to be, because of love. His love is what transformed all of that and made me the man that I am today. So me living the life that I've lived, right? Hearing things like this, I'm like, is this real? Is it possible for someone like me, knowing, the lifestyle that I lived and things that I did, to just come out unscathed like that? How is that even possible? It's by faith. Me genuinely believing that I'm a different person and that I've been given this new chance, this new shot at doing things right. Has to be by faith. So when you talk about faith, being a tool for my mental and my emotional health, absolutely. Like, obviously, we don't have time to get into some of the things that I've been through in my life, in my personal life, but faith has got me through it. Do you know what I mean? I talk
We
about
always have time
my
for
son. How did I know you'd say that? Yeah, I'll talk about my life, talk about my son. So those that are close to me know that my son was born premature, at 24 weeks and 4 days. That's insane. How did I get through that? Emotionally, mentally, by faith. Do you know what I mean? That's deep for people to go through that in the heat of the pandemic with, lockdown, me and my wife having to alternate to go in and see him, taking shifts, organization still running, still doing everything that it needs to do. I'm still doing 10-hour days, in a we work close to the office. We had to close to the hospital. We had to move and get close to St. Tommy's. We were in hospital for 5 months. First 5 months of last year was spent in hospital. How did you get through that on your own? So the question isn't, is faith real, and is faith something that, we should all live by? My question is, how could you not live by faith? How could you not have faith? Like, my fear is for those that don't have that anchor and that's something to lean on. That I'll be naked without it. Do you get where I'm coming from? So for me
Totally.
personally, like, I couldn't function without it. Like, my life is so dependent on it now that, like, I so get it. So get it. And it's like, why did it take me so long to get it? But all things happen, all in its time, right? I was supposed to get it at the time that I did, to enable me to be able to do what I'm doing, to help the people that I'm helping.
Yeah.
I've always said, I think religion, faith, whatever you want to, whatever it is to somebody, I think it's a superpower. I genuinely believe that, like, I think, like, you've literally just proven it as well. I think there's so many examples where people are in predicaments where they're about to give up, and God or whatever, like, entity they believe is there is able to give them, like, this kind of extra amount of strength, or they keep on going. And I just find that it's insane. I'm similar to Nick. Like, I'm not specifically religious, but I'm very open to, like, listening and understanding, because I think knowledge is power. And I've been in many moments in my life where I've been close to giving up, and I don't know how I've gotten through it, but there's always been something that's pulled me through. Maybe it's faith, maybe it is something, maybe it's faith in myself or faith in other people around me. But just in general, I think, yeah, I completely hear you, man. I think it's an amazing thing, and something that people, I think, should probably start, if they don't, like, follow a specific religion, they should have faith in themselves and use that as almost like a driving force.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to jump into your next question and ask it myself. You talk about how to sell faith to someone, and it's like, I wouldn't even sell faith, because really and truly, if you think about it, we use faith all the time, but we just don't know it. It's just a matter of, kind of looking at what you decide to have faith in. So I'll give you some examples, right? You're in Portugal right now. In order for you to come to the UK, you're going to have to hop on a plane. You put faith in the pilot to say that that pilot went to flying school and got a certificate. You don't see that certificate before you get onto the plane. You put faith in the pilot, you put faith in the airline for them to do their due diligence to employ someone that has the right qualifications to make you go from Portugal to London, right? That's you putting faith to work. That's faith. Let's take the plane away, for example. Let's look at the train. Let's look at the train driver, the bus driver. It's the same thing. We're putting our lives in these human beings' hands, having faith in them to get us to our destination, not thinking that this individual is literally going to drive me into a tree or run the train off the tracks. That's faith. So, like, faith, we can't function without faith. It's just a matter of, so it's not even about selling faith. It's like we all have faith. We use faith all the time. Like, we leave the house having faith that you'll be able to come back and see your wife and kids when you get back.
Yeah, that's so true. And when you're talking about your son and the premature birth and how faith got you through that, again, it seems to be whenever we talk about young kids, I think it's as a fellow new dad, that's always the bit that gets me most emotional. Like when you were saying that, I kind of was starting to well up. And
yeah,
it's mad when you become a dad or mum or parent.
It changes everything.
And it just definitely softens you up to another level. But what I wanted to understand, because when you talk about faith and how that got you through a specific moment in your life that was really challenging and really tough and must have put you in some tough places, like mentally and emotionally. When you say faith got you through that, is that because you have this, I'm believing this higher power that will help get me through this? Is that prayers? Is that, what is it specifically that you actually do as an action or exercise or activity?
Yeah. Do you know what? I'll be honest with you. That's a really, really good question, because a lot of people think that you build faith in the moment when you're going through those trials and tribulations. Sometimes you can't. I'll be honest with you. Like in that moment, it's difficult to pray. Do you know what I mean? It's not in that moment that you're going to try and get on your knees and trying to muster all the faith. You have to draw from the faith that you already have, right? So it's that belief in God that, like, you're going to get me through this, and when you're meditating and you're praying, it's in your quiet times, in your quiet seasons, where you're building up that faith, and you're trying out that faith. You're taking a step of faith, and that brings you to a new level of faith. Like, you achieve something or you accomplish something by faith, and that enables you to grow your faith. So when you need that faith, you can draw on it. So it's just like making a withdrawal from your bank account. You can't draw on what's not there, right? So you need to build your faith. So as a Christian, as a young Christian, everyone's given like a measure of faith, and it's your responsibility as a Christian to then build that faith and to grow it, for you to be able to tap into it and make withdrawals as and when you need to, right? So, like, it wasn't like it had to be God that got us through it, because your body's weak. Sometimes your mind's even weak, but you just know that you're going to get through this, right? So if you look at that scripture that I kind of paraphrased for you guys earlier on, like, you're going through those tribulations, but those tribulations, they work patience, and that patience works experience, and that gives you hope. So all of that thing is leading on to from one thing to another. And as you're doing that, you're growing, you're getting stronger, just like, yeah, sometimes you're faced with challenges. You're like, well, he got me through that. He got me through that. He's going to be able to get me through this. But those challenges continue to grow. It never stops.
Yeah, it's so interesting when you talk about it, because as someone who doesn't talk about faith a lot, when you talk about it like that, it feels like there's such a big overlap between mental health and faith. Because often we often talk about the phrase, invest in your health, whether that's physical, emotional, mental, but a lot of the time we talk about investing in your emotional and mental health. And in the last podcast with Josh, we were talking about building your mental resilience. So when you have these moments in life, you are better equipped to deal with them, whether that's stress or whatever comes up, you can deal with it better. And it's interesting hearing you talk about faith like that and investing in your faith, and you can't just, when something bad happens, that's when you start praying and looking for faith. You actually need to do it before. And it's in exactly the same way with your mental health. You can't, when you're going through something challenging mentally, you can't then look to completely build. It's before where you have to do the work. And I think I've never thought about it like that way, but it is it's not exactly the same thing, but there's so much crossover, and there's so much what you say that rings exactly true to when I think about mental health. And then also some of the things that I do to work on my mental health around, and as a new dad, as you'll understand, there's not as much time, but previously I was spending a lot more time doing the breath work and the stuff where you do have moments where you sit with yourself, and whether that's comparable to prayer and meditation and prayer being very similar. It's really interesting hearing you talk about it, because I don't know, me personally, I don't know if you're feeling the same, Ollie, but it just feels like there's so much in like the language we use a lot around mental and emotional health with what Duro's talking about faith. It just feels they cross over and overlap so much.
Yeah, I think there's so much more as well. I mean, you can start talking about communities and similar people with similar values and stuff. That's a huge part of it as well. I think that's finding your tribe is another thing that we talk about, which is really important. I think everyone should have a group of people around them that will support them and that will also like just understand what you're going through, because they're also similar to you. But what I found funny actually, Duro, was when you mentioned the bank account analogy, and I was thinking, this guy will have been probably depleted in faith, but you would have been rich, right? But then when you had more faith, you probably didn't have as much because you were working on something else. And I just find that there's this kind of weird correlation between actually finding, like, when you're young, you're on a journey, you're trying to find what is it that I want. And a lot of kids think, oh, it's money, it's fame, it's fortune, it's all these kind of things that they think are cool. And as you get older, as we spoke about at the start, you hit this level and you start thinking, actually, is this really making me happy? Like, do I want faith, or do I want money, or like, what do I
is
want?
wealth?
And it
what
changes.
Actually is wealth?
Yeah. No, absolutely. And we see it all the time. You know, in the program at 2020 Change, we've got a session called Success Motivation, kind of looking at what does success mean to you? How can you redefine your own, version of success? Some people, they come in saying, it's money, it's fame, it's everything that you mentioned. But then we try and get them to look beyond that. It's deeper than that. Like, how do you invest in yourself so you can invest in others and help others, become the best version of themselves? So when you start to thinking about that, your success is more than just you, your family, the nice car, the house, being able to provide. Once you're able to do that, and then what? Do you know what I mean? And when we bring people that have that so-called success that they're looking for, and they're telling them, look, there's still more, there's so much more, it gets them to start thinking differently. So I can come at it from a perspective of the lifestyle that I lived before. A lot of young people that aspire to that, for that life, will come to me and say, how did you just give everything up at the top of your game, kind of thing? And they're like, they'll never understand that until they get to that stage. And I'm trying to tell them, you don't need to. You can learn from my experiences, right? So they're thinking that I need to be there to know what you were feeling and how you were feeling in order for me to give it up. But chances are, how do you know you're going to make it there? Because things have changed. This is now 2022. I was in my heyday. That was what, early 2000s. The game's very different now. Like, people don't make that kind of money anymore from, what I was doing. So it's about getting the young people to start thinking differently, to learn from other people's experiences, and you realize that you can change things, and that ability is in you. You just need to tap into it, find it, give birth to it. We've all got something unique. That's why we're here.
And is that what you think? Because you're talking about, living or being the best version of you, or I think you talk about a lot about, fulfilling your potential and maximizing your potential. What is that? How can someone, how do you know when you are fulfilling your potential or kind of being the best version of yourself?
That's a really good question. Like, when you send the questions over, I was thinking, yeah, Nick's hitting the nail on the head with all of these questions, and I love it. And that's, it's one of those things where you're tapping into, how I would answer that is that you're tapping into everything on the inside of you to become the best version of yourself, right? So the more you tap in, the more you discover. It's ever evolving, right? So I don't know whether you'd ever get to a stage where I can say, yep, my name is Duro Oye, I've arrived and I've fulfilled my true potential. No, it's a shifting goalpost, right? Ever evolving. So I don't think you can ever get there, especially if you're constantly developing yourself and pouring into yourself and investing in yourself. The more you're doing that, the more your vantage point is elevated, the more you see, the more that you can become. The more you believe in yourself, the more that you start to think, wow, is this me? Right? I sit sometimes and I reflect, most times around my birthday, maybe Christmas or New Year, and I just look at how far I've come compared to the person that I was to where I am now, to the things that I'm doing, the people that I'm influencing. And then it goes beyond me, because it's like the young people that we're helping and that we're developing, what are they going to go on to do? Who are they going to go on to change? These are now young people that are becoming pillars in their own societies, and other young people are looking to them to say that, you know what, if he can do it, I can too. If she can do it, I can too. And like I said, I just played a small part in that. What did I do? I planted a seed. That's it. You get it? I've done my bit and I can step back.
How do we plant seeds as people that aren't as well practiced and well versed in the way that you are? How can other people, go about that?
That's a really good, really, really good point. And everybody can. Everybody's got learnings. Everyone's got experiences that they can share. You don't need to have lived my lifestyle to be able to help people. There are things that you do that, become the norm for you, that would be mind blowing for a young person coming from the communities that we come from, right? So even the fact that, setting an alarm, waking up on time, having a morning routine, a lot of these young people don't have that. Their environment doesn't permit them to have that. You've been able to share that with a young person, and that's something that they can take away. That's a seed that you've planted. That's a nugget that you've given them, that they can do whatever it is that they want. So one of the things that I enjoy doing is that, taking people out, taking them out to eat, especially when they're celebrating their goals and, achieving their goals, little milestones. It's just things like that. Like that's my hobby. Other people, they like football. I just like to go out to eat. So I take a young person with me, have them experience something new. And then I started to see, like, some of the young people that I did that with start to do that with other young people as well. I see it all on Instagram. It's actually absolutely amazing. Things that, just little things like that, right? And for me, they're the little joys in life. For me to be able to share what someone shared with me, with someone else, and continue that on. That's it. Because like I said, I removed myself from a particular environment, placed myself in a new environment, and I was embraced by the people in that environment. They showed me how to do things. I'm still learning. I'm a sponge. When you see me around, older people, I'm there with my notebook, taking notes, not noting things down. And it's the same thing with young people. So the way that they are with me, I am with my elders, and I'm constantly passing on the knowledge that I gained from them to that next generation in the same way that I did when I was in street enterprise. But now it's all positive. It's now things that they can build on and they can go on and do amazing things with. So everybody can do it. Like, you can find young people from your local community, from your household, from your family, that you can share some of your experience with as well. So the dream is that the young people that we're raising can hit a level of success that maybe took us 10 years to hit. They can hit in 5. So imagine the next generation coming after that, they can hit in 2.5. So it's things like that. It's just sharing knowledge and information that we wish we had when we were younger to the next generation, so that they can do the same.
I love that. And I think it's actually a really important message, because whether it's a big thing or a small thing, literally just smiling at someone in the street, that ripple effect of what your actions can do, whether it's taking someone out for lunch and giving them one bit of advice that might change their life. And it can be big, it can be small. But I think it's something that I think we often forget, or we can undervalue the importance of these things and how much of a difference it can make in someone's life, and that ripple effect then. And I love the way you talk about that ripple effect, how you do something and that person does that, that goes down and down and down and down. So I think it's a really important message, and something, again, a reminder to myself personally, that it's the small things that you can do every day that can help your life and most importantly help other people, whether they're going through a tough time or they're all right. Anything can brighten a day and spark some joy and spread some joy and some knowledge, as you say as well. I think that's a beautiful place to end this. And I just want to say thank you so much. I loved hearing your story, how you talk about faith, and generally you're an incredibly inspirational human being, and the work you do is incredible. if you want to share a little bit about where people can find out more about you and the work you do, go ahead.
Sure. Yeah, so we're all over socials. I mean, best place is the website, www.2020change.org. We're on LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, everything 2020 Change. So the numbers 2020 Change. And yeah, hit us up. If you know a young person that you feel will benefit from our program, please refer them. It's open to anyone aged between 17 and 30 that comes from an underrepresented ethnic group, low socioeconomic background, just a young person looking for an opportunity. We're happy to help.
Amazing.
Thank you, gents. Thanks, Ollie. Thanks, Nick.
I'm so zen right now. Thank you so much, Duro.
Yeah.
Honestly,
thank you.
I knew I'd come into this and learn something, but I feel like I've kind of come out with this with almost a little bit more faith, actually. So, thanks, mate. I appreciate you.
Me too, and I've
thank you for having me.
Definitely learned a lot, and that thing around faith and my version of faith and what that means to me and how I can actually get closer to that, I think I'm taking from this. So yeah, thanks so much. Thanks Duro. You've been an amazing guest. Thanks, Ollie. To all our lovely listeners, thanks for listening and watching if you're watching as well. Remember, you can keep up to date with Yogeez and what we're up to at Yogeez on Instagram, and also you can check the website too. We have our No Man's an Island Take 2 film that will be launching in about 2 weeks. It's about mid-August that we're going to be launching, so watch out for that. An open and honest conversation with 9 geezers who didn't know each other before, and they all stepped into a room, and by the end of the day, after quite a deep chat, we're all very close, but we're excited to share that with you. And for now, take it easy.
Today's a day.